I thought we could just sit down, have a chat about some book recommendations for any type of reader that you are, whether you like contemporary, paranormal, fantasy, just straight fiction, or even some dark romance or graphic novels. I have everything for you, so stick around for the video, see all the recommendations. Hopefully you'll find a new book that you will love. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today, like I said in the intro, I want to talk about some book recommendations that span across multiple genres. Of course, I don't have horror in here, I don't have thriller in here. I'm not much of a horror thriller girly, or even mysteries that are just straight mysteries, but I have a little bit of everything else. So before we get into the book recommendations, please make sure that you like and subscribe. Always check my description box below for all of my book links. That would be my socials. You can find my Pango Books account, also my Patreon, so many more things. So definitely check that below. So let's just kind of get into it. I've done my best on trying to separate them into genres. So let's just kind of go into the fantasy romance, which is going to kind of encompass everything, whether that be urban fantasy, dark fantasy, things like that. So the first book that I want to talk about is a very long series. I believe there are 12 books total in the whole series, but books 1 through 5 are basically the main series, and then as you go on, it covers other characters. It still has the same plot going, but just more expansive. And that would be Dark Fever by Karen Marie Moning. This is the Fever series. Like I said, you can read books 1 through 5 and be just fine. I feel like you would be satisfied at the end. I continued. Book 6, I think, is called Iced, and it's from another POV. Then you dive into book 7, which is from Michaela's point of view, and then you go into, I think, book 8, which is from a different point of view, and then 9, 10. You get the idea. I forgot which ones are which. I do know that book 6 is from a different point of view, though, and it is called Ice, and that kind of starts the more expansive plot that Karen Marie Moning was going for. However, I did not know this whenever I dove into the Fever series. I read it, read all 12 books, devoured it, absolutely loved it. And then I found out that some of the characters that are in here, even in the first 5 books, play a big integral part of a different series that she has. So I call it the prequel series, which I think there are 7 or 8 books in it. And the first book would be Spell of the Highlander. Now, here's where these kind of cross without giving anything away. This deals, it kind of brings in some of the Fae and people that are in this book that are really prevalent. They start out in this series. So I always tell everyone, read the first 5 books of the Fever series. You may end up loving it, but if you are somebody that's like, I've heard so much about this, or I've read the first 5 books of it and I want to continue on with the Fever series, go read the Highlander series by Karen Marie Moning before you finish out the Fever series, because I feel like you're going to get more out of it. The next fantasy romance kind of encompasses a lot of genres, and that is Fairytale by Veronica Lancet. This is a fantasy romance with gothic vibes, has a little bit of horror elements to it. It is so good. It's a standalone, so you're not going to be starting a series, which is always great. I always tell everyone, try this out because it is so good. Has such a unique concept. Of course, there are elements and story plots that are very similar to a lot of other fantasy romances, but this is very unique. The world is amazing. The characters are literally so amazing. I loved every bit of this. And it has a little bit of a mystery to it, which I really liked how that was kind of sprinkled in there. I really didn't know what to think of this book whenever I first started out, because it is almost 800 pages. But the one thing that I do love about Fairytale is it has so many different tropes in there that it keeps you wanting to read because you're trying to solve a mystery, but you have a guy that's in town that you're swooning over, or just different elements that make you want to keep going. And I absolutely loved it. This is a very unique book, and I always tell everyone, give it a try. It is so good. I had never heard about it before August of last year, and I am so happy that Arcane Society decided to do a special edition. It got me reading this book. I am now forever a Fairy Tale obsessive fan. The next recommendation I have for you in the fantasy romance genre is Blood Mercy by Vila Roth. This series there's 7 books that are currently published. There's a couple other, there's a novella, a couple other little tiny novellas that you can read that kind of encompass the whole world. But the main series is 7 books. The 8th book is going to be coming out in a few months, I believe, or maybe later this year. And it's going to finally end this whole Blood Grace series. This series is a fantasy romance. It is very dense. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It is a book that is slow moving. It is very politically heavy. And it also, like I said, is very dense, where it's people sitting around just talking about, how was your day? Oh, it was good. Do you like the coffee? Yeah, it's good. That kind of talk. There are a lot of slow moments where there's really not a whole lot of plot progression and there's not a whole lot of action going on. But if you can get through the slow moments, you realize that those slow moments are the key to the whole entire plot. You think that Vila Roth sat down to just write 800 pages of every single book and decided to just be very long-winded. Oh no. Everything, every detail matters. So if you do like a very politically dense fantasy, a very high fantasy, I would highly suggest Blood Mercy because there are some spicy scenes in here that are definitely worth it. The next fantasy romance, let's kind of get away from the fae, shall we? And let's talk about Shadow Kissed by Rebecca L. Garcia. This is a vampire fantasy romance. It is so good. I think Rebecca just got picked up by a publisher recently. I think that's what her announcement said. But this book starts a 4-book series. It's dark, y'all. It is a straight vampire fantasy romance. You're following our girl. She lives in a town that kind of neighbors the vampire kingdom, and the vampires aren't supposed to really go into the town. So, they have this whole group, I guess, that tries to keep them at bay, and her mom is the leader. You follow our girl through a lot. She meets the vampires. She deals with grief. There's definitely check trigger warnings because grief and suicide and a whole lot of other trigger warnings. You definitely need to check this before you read it, but it is a very unique vampire romance. It is so good, so well fleshed out. It is a finished series, so you don't have to worry about waiting for another book. If you like vampires, if you like a spicy fantasy romance, and you don't mind a little bit of the dark topics, pick this up. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And the last book in the fantasy romance genre is House of Beating Wings by Olivia Wildenstein. This is the first book in, I think, a 4-book series, and I think the 4th book is coming out later this year or has already came out. But it's a fae fantasy romance. Y'all, I love fae, okay? I'm sorry. That's what a lot of my recommendations are, but Olivia Wildenstein is so, so good at writing a very addicting book. What I mean by that is it may not start out very well written. You may find oh, well, I don't understand what this means, or why are we talking about this, or whatever. But you get halfway through the first book and you're set for the whole series. It is so good. You are trying to solve a mystery in here. Our girl is trying to save her people. I can't talk about it enough. If you like fae fantasy romance and you are looking for something that is a lot more unique than what you're finding out there right now, give this a try. I immediately wanted to go into the second book, which is House of Pounding Hearts, I think. It's so good. I thought it was so good because she gets told, a prophecy was told that if she frees 5 iron crows, she would marry the prince. And so she thinks that she's going to marry the prince who she has like been in love with for years. And our girl goes on a quest and she has no idea what she's doing. But man, the plot twists and the things that come out in this book, so good. All right. I have a couple here for some paranormal romances, and it's kind of hard to figure out what is a fantasy romance and what is a paranormal romance, right? Like, I have a very hard time trying to distinguish those unless you're talking about wolf shifters. I know that's paranormal. But other than that, it's so hard to discern. Let's get into it. The first book in our paranormal romance genre is the new adult paranormal romance of Shadow and Moonlight by Luna Laurier. This is an ongoing series. This is book 1. She has book 1.5, which is called Tipped in Frost and Blood. And then she also has book 2, which is called To Ashes and Dust. I do believe that there's still a few more days left on the Kickstarter that I had posted on a previous video that you can go get a special edition with all the works of A Shadow and Moonlight. It is still going, I believe, until early next week. So you don't have very much more time. I will link it below for you if you want to go and get your hands on this, because also all the stretch goals, I believe, are already met. So that means all of the audiobooks are going to be free whenever they come out. So much more goodies. However, let's get back to the book. So on the book, this is a unique paranormal romance because it deals with reincarnation. It deals with immortal beings. It deals with Greek gods. It deals with fighting a darkness that is trying to consume the world. It is, mates. There's so many things about this, but the story grabs you and doesn't let you go. And I just finished book 2 just recently, sobbing, complete sobbing. I ended up making a short on it because I was like, this book, I immediately messaged the author and I was like, oh my gosh, how could you do that? And then I finished the book and I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I was just panicking. I was like, I need the next book. I need to know what happens. And I know she's currently writing book 2.5, which is called She Who Bites. I don't remember what it's called. Anyway, it's coming out pretty soon. If you want a paranormal romance that has a very unique plot line, you want something that deals with immortals and Greek gods and a prophecy that you're trying to stop, you guys, this book is so good. Next up in this genre could be a fantasy romance, could be a paranormal romance. I'm not sure. I put it in paranormal romance. We're just going to leave it there. That is Blood Orange by Karina Halley. This is book 1 in the Dracula duet. I did not know that this is part of a series of duets, I believe, where the first book is Black Sunshine, and that is the first book in that duet. I don't remember what the second one's called. And then there is a standalone. It's called like The Night Wolf, I think. And it deals with characters that you meet in the first book. And then this is technically the 4th book, but the second duet starter. And it has some characters from the previous series. So you can read it however you want. I just read Blood Orange. I haven't read any of the others, which I am planning on doing. But in this book, you are following, of course, a guy named Dracula. Now, that's not his real name. He met Bram Stoker. Bram Stoker decided to write the book based on him, so everyone calls him Dracula. You're following our female main character, who is a vampire hunter, and she is out to kill Dracula. So she goes over to Italy. She's there to kill him. She's a witch. And the story goes from there. She meets Dracula. Things happen. Story gets insanely chaotic, but so good. Is this the best writing? Absolutely not. Is the story addicting? Absolutely. I did not want to stop reading this book, I would go to work and I would think about this book. So hands down, if you want a book that has like kind of a Dracula somewhat retelling, but it's a witch hunter or a vampire hunter who's a witch trying to track down Dracula and things happen, so good. I wonder how many times I'm going to say so good in this video. That's what I want to know. However, the last book in the paranormal romance genre is a YA book, and that is called The Blackbird of the Gallows by Meg Castle. This is a book that I read a few months ago. It was a straight cover buy in a bargain section at Books A Million. I am so happy I read it. It is so good. It is following our girl who moves to this town, and she's going to high school, and there's this guy there. Things kind of are not what they seem. She doesn't understand, why certain things are happening or certain people are being targeted. She finds out about our family who are not who they say they are. Things go from there. It is really good. I didn't realize that there is a second book in this series, so I am planning on reading that soon as it comes in, because I ordered it a month ago from Amazon and still hasn't arrived, and I'm desperate to get to the second book. However, if you want a YA paranormal romance that is very much full of gothic vibes, I have a suggestion for you. Okay, let's throw in kind of just a straight fiction book, shall we? And it's the only one that I have because I don't read a whole lot of just literary fiction or straight fiction. But this book I did read, and that is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is a chunker, you guys. One thing that I really, really love about this book and the cover is you have the cover where it shows like JFK is slain, but look at the back. JFK escapes assassination. First Lady is okay. So if that tells you what this book is about, it is a time travel mystery trying to save the president, but things don't go right. Our main character, he finds kind of like a wormhole, and he slips through it, and he finds himself back in 1960. So now he's trying to save JFK from his assassination. Things go wrong. He slips back through the wormhole. When he goes back to 1960, everything has reverted back to how it normally was, as if he was never there. He does this several times. He's on a quest. He's trying to save JFK, and it was so good. I highly suggest reading this. If you don't want to read it, though, you can go on to Hulu. They did make an adaptation on there. I think there's 7 or 8 shows on there, but it doesn't have everything that's in here. So if you don't mind that, go watch the show. It's still really good. It has James Franco as the main person. But if you are one of those people that really loves history and you love fiction, you like Stephen King's writing, you also really, are fascinated and intrigued by the JFK assassination, I highly suggest reading the book and not watching the TV show until after you've read it, because I feel like you're going to get more out of this book. I loved it. I am not a Stephen King fan whenever it comes to horror. I did try him. It doesn't work. But this book, he did a fantastic job on it, and I highly recommend this book. Okay, so let's talk about dark romance. Now, I do have several books that I could suggest, right? I could tell you read Haunting Adeline. I could tell you read, anything by Gemma James. I could tell you any of those. However, I have one here that doesn't get talked about a lot, and I feel like a lot of people would love it. And that is Losers by Harley LaRue. Now, this is Losers Part 1. There also is a Part 2. It's a duet. I highly suggest, if you are going to want to try this duet, read the novella first, which is called The Dare. It's only like 140 pages. It sets up the whole story. I do not suggest reading Losers Part 1 first. I really do suggest reading the novella because you are going to be so confused as to what is happening in this book if you don't read that novella. So that's my biggest recommendation, is to read the novella first. This series, or duet, or whatever you want to call it, is about a girl and a guy. A girl who was popular in high school, a guy who was part of like the losers and was always picked on and made fun of. They end up at a Halloween party right after they graduated. So just a few months after they graduate, she ends up playing him at beer pong. And he says if he wins, that she is his for the night to do whatever it is that he wishes. And it goes from there. There is a lot of trigger warnings for this whole series, so please check those before you go in. Also, there's a lot of kinks in here. You have humiliation, you have degradation, you have a whole lot of things. So please check the kink list and check trigger warnings before you dive into anything Harley LaRue. That is my biggest suggestion for her. But I absolutely love this. This is a reverse harem, by the way. Or we don't say that anymore. It's a why choose, right? So it is a why choose that is so fantastically written. Had me loving every single character. I read part 1 and I couldn't stop thinking. Even to this day, I can't stop thinking about these characters, how much I wish that they were my friends, that they were real people that I could go hang out with, because it's so good. I know that I've said so good so many times, but it is so good. So let's talk about something a little on the lighter side. If you like graphic novels, if you like manga, here's some recommendations for you. Boy, this light, the sun went down and now it's like really dark. So anyway, here is some manga and graphic novels recommendations. If you are a manga fan or maybe have never read manga and you want to try it out, a sweet romance that I absolutely love, and there is a anime adaptation on Netflix as well, and that is called My Happy Marriage by Akumi Agatagi. I'm gonna butcher that name. This is a really good manga. This is the light novel because I have let my cousin borrow the first volume of the manga, but this is following a girl who was raised where her marriage is going to be decided for her, and she is treated poorly by her stepsister and her stepmom. She wishes that she could just kind of get away and just kind of be herself. She is told that she's going to be marrying this duke who is presumed to be evil because he throws women out after 3 days. He never wants to get engaged to them, all of these things. So whenever she is going to live with him to see if he wants to marry her, she knows that after 3 days she has nowhere to go because she won't be welcome back home. And the story goes from there. It's sweet, it's wholesome, it's so good. I was crying, I was laughing, just so many things happening. I think there are 4 or 5 manga volumes out, but I think there's like 6 light volumes out. Light novels, which light novels are, just your standard book, where mangas are the ones with like the graphics and you read it, back to front and all of that. But I highly suggest My Happy Marriage if you like manga or you want to get into manga. And then if you like graphic novels or the webtoons or anything like that, or you want to kind of get into that, you've been thinking, hey, I see a lot of people talk about graphic novels, I want to try one out. I have a good suggestion for you. That is Freaking Romance, Volume 1 by Snail Lords. Volume 2 is coming out later this year. It is on Webtoons as well online. So if you don't want to wait for the bind-ups, you can go online and read the story. This is so, so good. The graphics are absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And it's about a girl who decides not to go to college for what her father wants her to major in. So she moves out, wants to pursue her own life, moves into this apartment which is haunted, and the story goes from there. She's living with a ghost guy, and the ghost guy can't see her, and it's her and him. It's so good. I absolutely loved this romance. I loved this different take on how they are living together, but not really living together. It's kind of weird, but I absolutely loved it. I loved every minute of this, and I can't wait for the second bind up to come out. I've already pre-ordered it, but if you are wanting to get into graphic novels, this is a good start because it's not very dense. It's very easy to read. It's very easy to sink into. You won't be lost or anything, and I think that you will end up loving this story. And then the last category or genre is contemporary romance. And I actually forgot that I have another dark romance in this stack and I put it in the wrong stack. So let's talk about that one first. So the dark romance that I have, I am talking to all you girlies out there that absolutely loved 50 Shades of Grey, absolutely loved that type of book, loved it so much, but you were like, I feel like there needs to be more plot. The story needs to be better. I need to feel like these characters actually want each other. Look no further to Follow Me Darkly by Helen Hart. This is a trilogy, and it's called Follow Me Darkly, Follow Me Under, and Follow Me Always. And if you like the trilogy, go and read it from Braden's perspective, called Darkly, Under, and Always. But this is really good because you're following Sky. She is from Kansas and now she's living in the big city. She is working for an influencer. And come to find out, the influencer and this other guy, Braden, they are kind of like enemies. And she ends up meeting Braden. She tries to stay away from him. They have kind of a spark going. It goes from there. It has a lot of 50 Shades of Grey vibes and plot points, but this is so well done. The story is great. Everything is so good. The characters are more fleshed out. You feel the romance, you feel the chemistry, you feel everything about it. So, if you want a better version of 50 Shades of Grey, look no further than Follow Me Darkly by Helen Hart. All right, 3 books to go in my contemporary romance section. Now, this is a YA contemporary romance, but it is so good. You can read it at any age, and I feel like it's going to resonate with you on some level. And that is Soulmates by Susan Lee. I just recently read this last month. It is so good. It is about 2 teenagers who are trying to find themselves, trying to figure out who they are, and they're just trying to fit in to the society, and they struggle with their emotions with each other, they struggle with a lot of things, but it is so good. They're best friends growing up and they stay best friends whenever he comes back into the picture. I highly suggest reading this book if you want a good, down to earth, wholesome romance that isn't wild and crazy and is a quick read. The second to last book that I'm going to show you is a very controversial one. You have some people that love this book, and then you have some people that really don't like this book, and it's all dependent on what you like and how you like to read books. But I suggest Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. This book was so good. It is following our main girl, who is kind of like a journalist, and she goes out to Hollywood to, I guess, interview the new James Bond. And it's kind of in a dual timeline. You're reading from her point of view 10 years in the past, and then you're reading her view in the present. And it's so good. I loved her and Gabe Parker together. I loved their story. I loved everything about it whenever it came to reading the dual timelines, because I really liked how you got the backstory on what happened, and then you get this what's happening in the present day. And it's so good. The way that Alyssa Sussman just flowed and everything worked out so well. I really loved this book. I really enjoyed it so much that I went on to read her next book. And I also have her newest novel, which is called Totally and Completely Fine, I think. It comes out later this year. And it is about Gabe and this girl's, or Gabe's sister, and her romance. So I can't wait to get that one. But if you want a good, quick, contemporary romance read that doesn't take a whole lot of thought, but you just want something that you can settle into, I highly suggest Funny You Should Ask. And the last book in this recommendations video is one of my newest all-time favorites, and that is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This book, you guys, broke my heart, ripped it to shreds, molded it back together again. It is about two, it's a dual timeline as well. And you have two kids who meet whenever they're really young. They're bookworms, so they sit around and read all the time. They become best friends. And then you're seeing them in the now timeline, which I think is 10 years or 11 years after an incident happens where he betrays her. And so now they meet up again whenever they're older and they're revisiting all of these things. So you're seeing them whenever they're younger and you're seeing them now. And it was so wholesome and so good and so gut wrenching that I was sobbing towards the end of this book. I did not see what happened coming. So definitely pick it up. If you have read Christina Lauren before, you would absolutely love this. But if you've never read Christina Lauren and you want to give them a try, this is a great starter book. I think this is the best book they've ever written. So that is it for all of my recommendations. I tried not to pick books that were commonly hyped, books that you hear everyone talk about. I know that I have some in there that just constantly get talked about, but I tried to give you some recommendations of some not so talked about books, books that are kind of underrated, that need more hype. And I hope that you found one or two books that you are going to give a try. Maybe I talked about a book that you feel is one of your favorites. Always leave me comments below. Let me know if any of the books that I talked about are some of your favorites, or if you are planning on picking up any of the books, and tell me which ones. But until next time, guys, I will see you later. Bye!